colleague Jim McGovern, who is conducting a Say No to Hunger Now tour across the state. This is his first stop. I'm honored that he was kind enough to join us here at QCAP, the Quincy Community Action Program, and also the Rosemary and Archie Wahlberg Early Education Center. They do a wonderful job here. But the idea here today is to put a spotlight on what's going on with the SNAP benefits and food insecurity, not only here but across the country because of the drastic cuts at the federal level. Jim has been a champion, a true champion of health and wellness and food and nutrition for, especially for children, but also for families in need. And his effort is to put a spotlight on this. So I want to thank Beth Ann Strollo, who's the CEO here of QCAP. We'll hear from her shortly, but very thankful for Jim to take a look at what we're doing here at QCAP and what the cut in those benefits by the federal government means to average families. So, Jim.
Thank you.
Yes.
First, I want to thank my friend Steve Lynch for all of his incredible leadership and for inviting me here today. I want to thank our friends at QCAP for all the wonderful work that they're doing. We got a great tour of the Head Start program, and it's really amazing, and this is something to be proud of. And so it's an honor to be here. Look, I've spent most of my career focused on the issue of food insecurity and hunger. We live in the richest country in the history of the world, and we have close to 48 million Americans who are food insecure or hungry. We all should be ashamed of that. And hunger essentially is a political condition. I mean, we have the money. I mean, we have money to bail out Argentina, to invade Venezuela, to pay off everybody in Greenland, but we don't have the money, according to this administration, to make sure people have enough food to eat. This administration, the Trump administration, in their big ugly bill, cut SNAP benefits by $200 billion. And the average SNAP benefit is about $2 per person per meal. That's it. People can't live on it. And they cut it by $200 billion. It's a disgrace. You know, I'm doing a tour throughout Massachusetts to listen and to learn and to hear stories about what people are going through, what people are worried about. And we want to take those stories and we want to elevate them in Washington. Because one of the things that we have learned is that, you know, facts and figures and statistics are not enough. They don't move people. But sometimes personal stories do. And we had some great testimonies in here that we will bring back to Washington and tell our colleagues, hopefully to move them into making sure that we have funding programs to make sure people have enough to eat. And if we can't move them, we hope to shame them because this is a crisis in this country. And let me just finish with this. You know, hunger is costly. You know, kids who don't eat on a regular basis don't do well in school. You know, workers who go without meals are less productive in the workplace. People who don't have access to decent, nutritious food end up with all kinds of health complications. You know, and that is costly for everybody. So if people don't feel compelled to stand with us on this because we have a moral obligation to feed the hungry, and if all they're worried about is the bottom line, that they ought to be with us anyway because hunger is costing this Commonwealth and this country enormously. And we appreciate the work that Governor Healy and the state legislature are doing. We appreciate the work of our food pantries and our food banks, but the federal government needs to do its part. And so I appreciate being here today, and you know, and this has been very, very helpful for me.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder before I bring Beth Ann up: 80% of the recipients of SNAP benefits are children, right? 18 million children. It's senior citizens who don't have the ability to go out and work, and also people living with disabilities and the people who care for those three groups. So, and it's $2 per meal. That's what the cost is here. So it is absurd. It's absurd that the federal government would back away from this. The Trump administration would back away from this commitment to such a vulnerable demographic within this country. But again, I want to welcome our host, Beth Ann Strollo, the CEO of QCAP.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman Lynch. Thank you, Congressman McGovern, for bringing attention to this issue that is really part of the critical safety net that so many people rely upon to get by every day. What we do at QCAP is help people get through a crisis, but also help them to move forward in their lives. And food benefits, both food pantries and SNAP, are essential to that, along with other things like fuel assistance, housing assistance, and medical assistance, so that people can piece together their lives with a very limited income. In our food pantry, the average income is $27,000 a year, a little over $27,000 a year. I think everyone knows that that is not enough to survive on, that you cannot pay your rent, pay for childcare, pay for food, for your medications on that very limited income. So we're here to help people get through that, and we are incredibly grateful to our Congressman Lynch, who represents us, but Congressman McGovern, who speaks so passionately about this issue and has for decades. We are grateful to the entire congressional delegation in Massachusetts who supports programs that assist people and helps them get by, and to our state leaders who have done the same thing. So we thank you for also elevating the issue and raising attention to it, with the hopes that the support will continue and grow. Thank you.
Any questions?
I think we're frozen.
Okay, all right. You've suffered enough.
Typically not speechless, but
Yeah.
You're frozen.
close to it now.
Does this kind of amplify the impact of any cuts to fuel assistance programs?
Well, it's very much so. I'm sure Jim can add to that. But when you think about the demographic that's relying on SNAP benefits, many of those same families are relying on fuel assistance. Many of them as well relying on Medicaid, Medicare. So those benefits are also being cut. The president's big, beautiful bill cuts $1 trillion out of Medicaid. So you can see it's almost like an assault on a demographic of the most vulnerable people in our country that's going on right now, shamefully.
I just say we have an affordability crisis in this country. I mean, life for people is just too damn expensive. Groceries are up, the cost of utilities are up, rents are high. Everything is more expensive, and so yeah, people need help to put food on the table. They need help for their fuel assistance. It's freezing here. I left my coat in the car. I can attest to that firsthand. But so you need to heat your homes. It's and we're cutting fuel assistance. They're cutting everything. The only thing they're not cutting are tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. I mean, this administration is investing in stupid stuff, and the priorities are all messed up. I mean, what matters, is what happens in this country. And government should be about improving the quality of life for people, not making their life more miserable. When I go into a supermarket, I see senior citizens putting groceries back on the shelf because they don't have enough money to pay for what they used to be able to afford. That's crazy. That's crazy. So, I mean, we're fighting to try to, straighten out the priorities in Washington. But in the meantime, we have to do damage control. Because again, they cut SNAP by $200 billion. They put in all this new paperwork requirements and new work requirements that don't make any sense. And by the way, the overwhelming majority of able-bodied adults who are on SNAP work. They're working sometimes 1 or 2 jobs, and they're earning so little they still qualify for the benefit. So we have to do better. So again, coming here and listening to individual stories is very, very helpful to us. And we will bring them back to Washington and again, hopefully persuade or shame our colleagues into at least, at a minimum, halting these cuts.
Any other questions?
What sort of information are you and what sort of information from these testimonies are you going to take back to Washington?
Well, I think for me, the demographic that I think there's a belief out there that that these people who are coming in for SNAP benefits and visiting our food pantries are, people who are not working, or or people who are shirking responsibilities. And that is not the case at all. We're seeing people that are working 1 and 2 jobs that are struggling with their utility payments, because those are off the charts. They're struggling with their groceries. They're struggling with their rent. So these are working families. So unfortunately, because of the increases in prices, we're seeing a greater level of subscription to food pantries like the pop-up pantry that is here, in addition to the Head Start. So it's a much different demographic than people, I think, have traditionally believed, subscribed to food pantries. And I think also from the White House, there's been a condemnation and almost a culpability that has been foisted upon people who actually have to come to a food pantry to rely on, getting enough food for themselves and for their children.
Yeah, we talked to Ted Donnelly, who was the QCAP program director of the Southwest Community Food Center. He's telling us that the numbers of people who are showing up in need of food are going through the roof. I mean, and people of all backgrounds. I mean, as Steve said, many of them are working families. And by the way, food pantries and food banks, in and of themselves can't solve this problem. They can help, but they can't solve this problem. We have to make sure that these programs are adequately funded at the federal level, and we have to make ending hunger and food insecurity a priority. And we also heard from individuals, whose lives are very complicated, and who are telling us how they're struggling to remain eligible for the benefit, but also how the benefit in and of itself is not enough. So there's a lot that we need to do. But look, we have to start talking about this stuff. We have to start fighting back, and we have to start making sure that the narrative out there is accurate. SNAP is not a fraudulent program. It is one of the most efficiently run federal programs we have. The people who are in need of this benefit are increasingly working families. They're working, they're doing everything right. And in this country right now, they can't afford to feed their kids. Anybody here who's a parent, would go out of their mind if they couldn't put food on the table for their kids. And yet we have people in our community here who have to struggle with that issue every day. So we're in this fight. We're doing damage control right now. We hope that the realities change in Washington so we can actually do more and actually move toward ending hunger once and for all in this country.
All right. Thank